back to another New World video. Today, I'm going to mention as many mid-game New World Aeternum tips, tricks, and important info that will help you out if you're either a brand new player starting out on October the 15th or someone who is a returning player and you've just not been here for a very long time. I've already released an early game tips, tricks, and info video on the channel with an end game version following this one. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, hitting the like button, and let me know in the comment section down below along with any other early game tips, mid game tips, or even late game tips that you can think of that I may not have included in all of these 3 videos. I currently have 3,800 hours played in New World, and I'll be firing up a fresh start character and playing through over on my Twitch channel. If you'd like to head over there and drop a follow, ready to see that, and we can discuss even more tips, tricks, and everything else that we possibly can there over at twitch.tv/LiamH. I'll leave a description down below. Tip number 1. Utilize the group finder. Instead of asking in chat when you need help with a dungeon, say for example Dynasty or Starstone or Amrine, but you could get up to that front door dungeon and then just be sat there spamming chat, you know, looking for a healer, looking for a tank. Utilize the group finder. And then also what you can do is you can create your own lobby, and then let's say you're the tank, you can create your own lobby and then just go off and carry on playing the game and wait for those slots to fill up. Or you can use the randomizer in there as well if you just want to join other groups randomly. But the tip here is don't waste time just stood at a front door of a dungeon waiting for those players to join you. Either use the group finder or use the randomizer and then just carry on the game, and at least then you're not wasting any time. Tip number 2, Cutlass keys has changed. So this is something that used to be 25 plus. This is now changed and moved over to an end game map and zone. It's going to be the new free-for-all PvP zone. Utilize the end game. So if this was an area that you were thinking of going over to around about level 25, you can no longer do that. Tip number 3, houses. So the overall thing with houses is you can buy a house. I think it's from level 15 onwards, so long as you've got a level 10 in territory of any town. And your first house is minus 5,000 gold. So if you just wanted a quick tier 1 house, that would be completely for free. And then all the other tiered houses, you get 5,000 coins reduced from that first one. Tip number 4, sticking on with houses. So don't worry if you end up buying a couple of houses sort of mid game, and then late game you want to sort of like move on to the largest tier, like the tier 5 houses and stuff like that. Because if you were to sell those original houses that you bought, you would get 50% of that gold back to you. So it's not like a complete loss. You are losing some money there, obviously. But a little tip here would be, let's say you're mid-game and you just really needed some coin really quickly, and you've invested in like a small house, maybe like 2 tier 1 houses, for example. So that second tier 1 house, you spend 5k. And if you really needed 2,500 gold really quickly, and again, it's mid-game, you don't really need the houses too much at mid-game, you could sell that second house and then get 2,500 coins back and get a little bit of money back in your flow if you need it. Tip number 5. So this is where now maybe you start working out aggro. If you didn't know this in New World, if you look at the health bar above any mob, it will sort of glow a thicker red, almost like a border around the health bar. That is the game telling you that you currently have the aggro. There's different logos for taunts and things like that, but the actual, if you want to know if you have the aggro and you're expecting the mob to turn around and come after you, look for that sort of glowy red thicker border around the outside of the health bar. Tip number 6, mid-game. So this might be when you're going out and you're starting to gather a lot more and maybe try and like level up a little bit quicker and stuff like that. Utilize your music skill buffs. I'll put some of these up on screen so you can see them, but basically if you get an hour or 2 here and there free and you're not doing anything else, level up your music skill, because that's where you can then put self buffs on that will last quite a long time. Or if you don't want to sort of do that, you can't be bothered, if you look around most towns, right in the center of towns, you'll see somebody playing music. You can stand in the little zone that they're playing it, and you can go tip 10 coins and you can receive that buff from them. You can get like gathering buff, XP buffs and speed and all this kind of stuff. I'll list them all on the screen so you can see them. But basically, yeah, little tip here, don't skip out on the music skill buffs. Tip number 7, flagging for PvP when in the open zones. Obviously, to flag for PvP, you need to press the U key if you're on PC. You need to do this while you're in a town or at a shrine. You can't flag for PvP when you're out in the open world already. You get a plus 10% XP boost. You get a plus 3% gathering luck boost, and also a plus 1% global luck boost. Now, there's no risk in this game in losing items if you get killed. Literally, the worst thing that could happen is, somebody comes out, they kill you, or they beat you in that 1v1, or even if it's a couple people coming to kill you, The worst that can happen is basically you respawn, you know, at your local camp if you put one of those down, or at the local shrine or the town. You do not lose any items. And if it becomes a bit of a nuisance, you can always just unflag. Tip number 8, luck. Now, there's various different types of luck in this game, but the general overall luck, normally referred to as global luck. I'll explain quickly how this works. I've got a video on my YouTube channel from like 2.5 years ago when I first explained this. But essentially, luck works this way. It only affects the chance of receiving named items from chests or bag drops, for example, from mobs. It does not increase the chance of higher gear score or even better perk combinations on the gear. So specifically, if you are doing elite chest runs where you want named items to drop, like trophy materials, for example, or if you're searching for named items maybe from boss drops in chests and stuff like that, that's when you want to equip as much luck gear as you possibly can. But again, if all you're after is just higher gear score, or if a certain drop that you're after isn't a named item, then luck will not affect that. It only affects the chance of receiving named items. Tip number 9, before entering a PvE dungeon, make sure you are not close to your max weight. The amount of times I've seen people caught out in the middle of dungeon runs, and sort of mid-game, you start to get a lot more into dungeons by this point now. There's 4 or 5 mid-game. If you're really close to your max encumbrance, you get halfway around the dungeon, maybe you're about to run away from a, you know, like a boss because you caught aggro by accident from the tank, and then all of a sudden, you know, you maybe just picked up a couple of items from a bag on the floor from like a smaller mob dying. Then you hit your encumbrance, and then you're stuck walking slow, and that boss just slams you, and you're dead. So basically, yeah, just pre-check before you're planning on jumping into a dungeon. Salvage all the material in your inventories if you can, or store anything in your towns and stuff like that. Tip number 10, nice little easy one. Especially mid-game now, maybe you're starting to get involved in crafting that a little bit more. And you obviously, since it's mid-game, you don't really remember all the items off the top of your head. And some crafting recipes can be like 4, 5, 6 items long, and it's hard to remember. Back in the day, I used to have to keep going back and forward from reading the recipe out and then writing it down or something like that. Now there's a little option there on screen. I'll try and show you it here now, where you can pin the recipe to the top right. Simple as that. So then that way, if you need to go to a trading post and buy some of the items, or if you're going to go out in the open world and farm them, you can just have that nice, easy recipe to be able to read and remember. Makes things a little bit more simple. Tip number 11. If you ever see in the global chats or the recruitment chats, somebody types something on the lines of plus chest run, or sometimes in some servers it's like X chest run, or even if it's maybe a dungeon type or some PvP open world, and they type in plus PvP or something like that. If you want to know what that is, that's just basically people advertising that there's some kind of activity going on. If you want to join them, I wouldn't recommend DMing the people because that could be a little bit annoying. Just follow up in the same chat. So if it's recruitment chat or global chat, for example, just follow up with the plus symbol, and then along with whatever it is, you know, whether it be chest run, you know, Merc God run, which is kind of end game, but you get what I'm trying to say here. Just follow that up in the recruitment chat, and that's the best way to get those people to invite you to the raid groups or the dungeon groups and stuff like that. Tip number 12, transmog items. So my little tip here will be, try and complete every dungeon in the game at least once whilst leveling up. The reason why is these dungeons drop a ton of items, a ton of armor, a ton of weapons. Every single individual item that is obviously different will be its own transmogable item. So it's kind of like a transmog checklist, if you like, in this game. The way it works is, so let's say there's a, you know, plain grey sword, for example, right? That will be one transmog item, this plain grey sword. Maybe you can only get that from this certain dungeon. Once you go in that dungeon and you pick up that item, it hits your bag, you've now saved in your transmogable items, you've saved that grey longsword, right? And then that way in future, if you want to use a transmog token to permanently unlock it, and then you can apply it as a skin to any sword that you use in future, this will be the way it works. Now, in dungeons, the tip here is you just get so many. So if you want to fill up that possible transmogable items, do each dungeon at least once in the game. Tip number 13, proficiency boost potions. Now, you can either craft these yourself. I believe they come from alchemy. But basically, they can increase your yield by X percentage, depending on the tier of the potion. You know, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Now, again, mid-game, you're starting to get out there. You're starting to sort of go and gather a bunch, maybe mine a bit more, or whatever it may be in your gatherable items. Now, if you want a bit of a boost, because you might not have the best tools right now, you can use these proficiency boost potions. You can buy them on the TP if you don't want to craft them yourself, or you're not up to that part yet. But I would advise carrying a couple of these. And then when you go out there, it just speeds up the amount of items that you can gather, and then overall speed up your crafting. Tip number 14 follows on from that, though. You can also get encumbrance potions. A lot of players don't even know that these exist in the game sometimes. Now, whilst mid-game, these can be handy before you get the end game bags. You know, you're not quite there yet. You don't have those big storages. Again, you've gone and used the proficiency boost potions that we spoke about in tip number 13. If you carry with you encumbrance potions, let's say you've got to mine a ton of ore and then all of a sudden, bang, you're full. Without these encumbrance potions, you've either then got to go and delete, essentially drop a couple of those ores that maybe you've got to mine. With this proficiency boost, you can then keep all of them. Sorry, encumbrance potion boost. You can then keep everything that you've just gathered and even carry on gathering that a little bit more before you then get encumbered. Always handy to keep a couple of these in your bag if you're going to be going out there gathering. Tip number 15, if you're interested in PvP, 3v3 arenas should unlock at level 20, so you can get involved with those. They'll be on the activity screen. Tip number 16, if you find yourself maxing out any weapons at level 20, try and move on to using other weapons, as the more weapons you can get to level 20 as you then progress towards, like through mid-game towards the end game, the better. It'll allow you to play more and varied builds, which basically equals a higher chance of you getting into group content. So like, let's say for example you start with the, I don't know, Life Staff and Void Gauntlet. You get Life Staff and Void Gauntlet mid-game maybe to level 20. Sure, you can carry on playing that and keep practicing it and keep better, sure. But then once you get to then end game, if you only have those 2 weapons available at level 20, and then all of your friends or one of your friends plays healer, and you know, they're like, I'm playing healer, you need to play DPS or tank, but they're the only 2 weapons you got at level 20, you're kind of then stuck and you have to sort of go away from joining that group content, and then you're going to go farm your weapons. So basically the tip here is try and get as many weapons to level 20 or as high up if you can. You know, once you go past 10s, 12s, 15s, that's when you'll be fine at the very, very start of endgame to be able to use those weapons. They don't have to be perfectly 20 at the very starting point of endgame. So yeah, get as many of those to level 20 as you can. Tip number 17. Again, mid-game, you're going to probably start getting used to buying and selling items on the trading post now. When using the trading post to sell items, obviously, search for the item first. Let's say you've got some iron ore, right? And you're thinking, right, I've used all my iron ore to do my own crafter now. Maybe let's go try and sell it and make some money. First of all, search for the item. Search for iron ore. Filter at the top so then you can see the cheapest at first. And let's make up some prices just so it sounds easy, right? Let's say it's 100 gold coins per 1 iron ore. That's the cheapest, for example, right? Now, what you don't want to go and do is crash the market by listing them at, say, 50 gold coins. Now, if you did list it at 50 gold coins, sure, that'd be a nice, easy sell. And maybe you do need some money quickly, but it'll crash the market in the long run. People will start seeing it listed for 50 gold and then get used to buying it at 50 gold, and it's just going to bring down the price, and it's kind of going to ruin the economy for everybody, right? The game is a player-driven economy, so it is up to you and me to sort of work out on the value and stuff like that. So my advice here, or my tip here, is just list it for 0.01 cheaper than the cheapest. So if the 100 gold coins is the cheapest, list it at 99.99. Now, look, if you do need some quick sales, the best way to do it is to then go into the trading post and search for other people's buy orders of, say, iron ore. You might see that people are then trying to buy it for 80 coins, 75 coins. Sure, go and sell those direct buy orders. That's fine. Do you know what I mean? People will put buy orders to try and save themselves a bit of money, but don't undercut the market of whatever item it is you're trying to sell by a huge amount. Just undercut it by 0.01. You will sell the items eventually, or even straight away, depending on how high demand they are, and you won't crash the market for everybody else. And that concludes the end of my tips, tricks, and important info for mid-game. This one was a little bit tricky to make than the early game and the end game one, but hopefully you guys found this information useful. Now, again, like I said at the start of the video, if you think I've missed any, or if you could think of any extra that I've not for mid-game, put them in the comment section down below. If you've enjoyed the video, I would appreciate a like and a sub. That'd help me get towards that 5k, which is my next goal at the time of recording this video. And as ever, if you want to be an absolute legend, come and check me out over on Twitch. I'll put it in the comment section down below as well. I'll pin it in there. Click on there, drop me a follow, and come and see me play the game October the 15th onwards, and I'll see you in the next one.